The theory was a ghost that haunted me. One agent, in the right place, at the right time, with the right skills, could be more effective than an entire army. They told me that during the Cold War. They whispered it like a prayer. They branded it onto my soul. I was that agent. I am that ghost. But tonight, in the dripping, garish heart of the Red King Casino, the theory felt like a curse. The air was thick with cheap perfume and cheaper dreams. Natasha moved ahead of me, a shadow within shadows. I paused for just a second, watching her. There was a brutal poetry to it. She wasn't fighting. She was conducting a symphony of controlled chaos. A twist here, a sharp pressure there, a graceful pivot that ended with a soft thud against the carpet. She moved through the armed guards like they were standing still. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It reminded me of a time when efficiency was all I understood. We reached the lower vault, our boots silent on the cold concrete. Our target was Project Zephyr, a stasis tube, just like the one they kept me in for decades. My stomach turned to ice. The reinforced glass door was already open, frosted air spilling out into the room like a last, dying breath. The tube was empty. Someone had beaten us here. Someone had woken a sleeper. A cold dread, sharper than any Siberian wind, began to crawl up my spine. It wasn't just a mission failure. It was a piece of my own nightmare, broken loose and walking the world. I could almost hear the echo of hydraulic hisses, feel the burn of the serum in my veins. I forced my metal hand to unclench. Natasha's voice was a low, tight wire beside me. "It's like the one they put you in." She didn't look at me. She was staring into the empty tube, her face a mask. But I heard it, the faintest tremor underneath the steel. I tried to laugh, to break the tension. It came out hollow, a dry cough. Thought nothing scared the great Black Widow. She finally turned, and her eyes were chips of green ice. Yeah, that's what I thought too. She turned away, heading for the exit. I stayed a moment longer. The empty chamber wasn't just empty. It was a question, an accusation. 3 of them. 3 men I trained, 3 weapons I helped forge, then forgot. The war ended, and we were all filed away. But files can be reopened. Weapons can be reissued. Memories, sharp as shattered glass, cut through me. Not images, not yet. Sensations. The biting cold of cryo-freeze. The fuzzy, disjointed voice of a handler through the fog. The weight of a rifle, perfectly balanced in my hands. The face of a young soldier, eager, loyal, listening to every word I said about infiltration, about becoming American, about waiting for the signal. They were sleeping, just like I was, and now one of them was awake. Back in the safe house, the noise was a different kind of assault. The television flickered, a news anchor's plastic face talking about James Buchanan Barnes, war hero, best friend of Captain America, lost in the Alps, a tragic, noble end. They showed a black and white photo of a kid with a goofy smile, a kid I'd barely remember being. I kept flipping, channel after channel. My own ghost story played on a loop for a world that needed simple endings. The screen went black. Natasha stood there, remote in hand, her body rigid. "Are you really going to sit there and watch that garbage?" Her voice was too sharp, all the tension from the casino coiled tight in her words. "What's with you? Ever since we found that tube, you've been..." "Tense?" she finished, crossing her arms. She looked away, out the grimy window at the neon-lit street below. "It scared me, Bucky, seeing that thing. I once saw you in one of those. It scared the hell right out of me." I wanted to make another joke, to deflect, but the truth was a stone in my throat. I was twice as tense as she was. That vault had been a door into a past I'd sealed shut, and now that door was swinging wide open, and something had walked out. I saw them then, in my mind's eye, not as soldiers, as boys. Arkady with his vicious streak, Leo, the perfect KGB product, Dmitri, the loyal patriot. I molded them. I taught them how to walk, talk, think like the enemy. I taught them to bury themselves so deep in the American dream they'd believe it themselves until the code phrase whispered in their ear. Then the dream would curdle into a nightmare for everyone around them. They were my legacy, not the statue, not the history book, these 3 sleeping ghosts. And an ex-KGB general, a vulture called the Red Barbarian, had just sold their activation codes on the black market. Later, the electronic chime of a secure feed cut the silence. Jasper Sitwell's face, pinched and serious, filled the laptop screen. "Your hunch was right," he said, his voice tinny through the speakers. "The handler is a man named Nick Stanton, real name Niko Stanovich. He's been living here since the 80s, married, 2 kids, on a roll, the whole quiet, perfect American life." Natasha leaned forward. "What changed?" "A phone call this morning. After he got it, he killed his family, Natasha, his wife, his kids, burned every document in his home office. Then he drove straight to the Red King Casino. He extracted the sleeper." The room got colder. This wasn't espionage. This was a disease, a dormant virus activated with a single phrase, burning out its host to spread. Stanton, Stanovich, was a sleeper in a way, a man living a lie until the truth called and demanded blood. "We're running facial recognition on everyone who left that casino," Sitwell continued. "But until we get a hit, we have another lead, another name from the old Snatch Squad roster." He pushed a file to our screen. Mikhail Bakov, Minnesota. Rain. It was always raining in my memories, and it was pouring in Minnesota, a cold, relentless drizzle that soaked through my jacket. Through the binoculars, I watched Mikhail, Mel he called himself now, loading boxes into a pickup truck. He was scared. I could see it in his hunch of his shoulders, the frantic way he moved. He knew the past was coming to collect. Natasha stepped out of the mist like a part of it, her voice calm. "Looks like you're getting ready to go somewhere, Mikhail." He didn't speak, he just moved, a blur of panic. His hand went for his waistband, a pistol coming up. The sharp crack of fire guns split the damp air. He turned and ran, right into the path where I knew I'd be. My metal hand shot out, catching him by the throat, slamming him against the wet siding of his house. His eyes bulged, not just from the pressure, but from recognition, pure, unadulterated terror. "Ty должен быть мертв," he choked out. You supposed to be dead." I leaned closer, the rain dripping from my hair on his face. "That's the best thing about being dead, Mel. You can do anything you want." He broke. He gave us the location of the next sleeper. It wasn't much, but it was a thread. And as we left him shivering in the rain, I felt no victory, only a deeper chill. He was afraid of me, but he was more afraid of whoever had woken the sleepers. He was happy to be out of their reach. Who were they? The facility was a raid outpost, a splinter group of AIM, scientific terrorists playing with things they didn't understand. Natasha and I slipped inside like whispers. We were good, too good. But one guard, before he went down, slapped a panic button. The silence erupted into chaos. Alarms shrieked, boots pounded on metal grating. We fought our way back, a fighting retreat through corridors lit by flashing red lights. We burst out into the gray afternoon, the cold air, a shock. Then the ground shook, not from an explosion, from something big, moving. A voice boomed from behind the compound walls in guttural Russian. "Smert Amerika," death to America. I turned, and I saw it. A gorilla, 8 feet tall, muscles coiled like steel cable, wearing a tactical harness, and in its hands a massive rotary cannon. It roared, the sound drowning out the alarms. The muzzle flashed. "Natasha, rooftop, clear a path," I yelled, my voice raw. I didn't wait. I ran towards it, pulling a smoke grenade from my belt. The canister clattered at its feet, billowing white. I fired into the cloud.
the shots pinging off its harness. I needed its eyes on me. The cloud parted. The gorilla charged. I had a microsecond to think, this is insane, before a fist the size of a cinder block connected with my chest. The air exploded from my lungs. I was weightless. Then the world slammed into me as I crashed through the wall of a generator shed. Pain bloomed bright and hot. I heard Natasha's repulsors whine from the rooftop, taking out snipers. I pushed myself up, gritting my teeth. The gorilla was coming, a dark shape in the smoke. I raised my pistol, aiming for the joint of its harness. It didn't come closer. Instead, with a surprising, terrifying grace, it reached to its back and hit a switch. Jetpacks on its harness ignited with a blue flame. It lifted off the ground, the downstrom scattering the smoke. It hovered for a second, looking down at me. Its eyes were intelligent.
The medical bay on the SHIED transport was sterile and silent. The ache in my ribs was a dull, constant throb, a physical reminder of the gorilla's fist. But the deeper pain was in my head. The image of that empty stasis tube, a coffin with its occupant stolen. Sitwell's face was on the monitor again, but the background was different. The chaos of a situation room. "We've got a bigger problem," he said, no greeting. "An hour ago, in Manhattan, an attempted assassination. Target Victor von Doom, right on the steps of the Latverian embassy." A video feed popped up. The grim, iconic mask of Doom. The sudden flare of an RPG from a rooftop. The explosion engulfing him in fire and debris. Standard news footage, chaotic and loud. Then a second window opened. A grainy, black and white still, lifted from a traffic camera across the street. It showed the shooter in the moment after firing, turning to leave. The profile was clear. Hard eyes, a sharp jaw, a look of absolute, cold focus. My breath caught in my throat. It was like looking into a distorted mirror. "Arkady," I whispered. The name tasted like rust and old snow. "You're sure?" Natasha asked softly. She was standing by the door, her arms crossed, but her eyes were on me, not the screen. "I'm sure." I couldn't look away from the frozen image. The supreme bastard, they called him. Vicious, efficient, without a shred of remorse. I taught him how to make a shot like that. I taught him how to vanish after. He's one of them, the first sleeper. "Okay," Sitwell said, pulling up data. "So we have a semi-intelligent, jetpack-equipped gorilla, raid on payroll, and their first sleeper agent just tried to turn Dr. Doom into scrap metal on U.S. soil. Does any of that make a coherent picture?" I finally tore my eyes from Arkady's face. The gorilla, the simian strength, the advanced tech. A name surfaced from the murk of old KGB briefings. A mad scientist who loved his primate assistants. "Red Ghost," I said, the pieces clicking into a horrifying puzzle. Ivan Kragoff. He was a consultant on Project Zephyr, theoretical physics, cryogenics, and animal uplift. Natasha nodded slowly. "So Kragoff has the sleepers, but why hit Doom? Anyone who knows Doom knows an RPG is just a way to make him angry." It wasn't an assassination, I realized, the cold understanding settling in my gut. It was a provocation, an inciting incident. You don't try to kill Doom with a rocket. You try to make him retaliate. Sitwell's eyes widened. A false flag. Frame someone. Start a war. The scale of it took my breath away more than the broken ribs. This wasn't a simple smash and grab. This was geopolitical arson. Fury himself gave us the next lead. A black market auction in Chicago, run by a group called Bad Juju Acquisitions. If Kragoff bought the activation codes, he might have bought other things there too. We went undercover. The auction house was all dark wood and darker money. Natasha wore a dress that cost more than my last safe house, and I felt like a thug in a tuxedo. We watched as bizarre, dangerous tech was paraded and sold to anonymous bidders. A chunk of vibranium alloy, a dormant Ultron drone. The air was thick with greed. I couldn't take it.
The opulence, the casual trade and destruction, while out there a ghost I created was being aimed like a missile. When the auctioneer held up a small crystalline data chip, Lot 44, Provenance, Department X, Sverdlovsk, I stood up. I didn't say a word. I just pulled my pistol and fired a single shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Chaos erupted, just as I knew it would. I wasn't here for subtlety. I was here for the auctioneer. He was already running, a weasel in a velvet jacket, towards a back door. His bodyguard, a mountain with an electrified baton, stepped in my way. I didn't break stride. A sweep of my leg, a twist of my metal wrist, and I had the baton. It buzzed in my hand, and I jammed it into his chest. He convulsed and dropped. Outside, the rain was falling again. The auctioneer was slipping on the wet pavement. I didn't run. I threw the baton. It spun through the air and landed in a puddle just ahead of him. He stepped into it, and 20,000 volts turned his sprint into a shuddering collapse. I hauled him up. "Don't pass out yet," I growled, the rain plastering my hair to my scalp. "A month ago, you sold activation codes for 3 Soviet sleepers. Who was the buyer?" He babbled, teeth chattering. An old man, scientist type, Russian accent. "Ivan Kragoff, I know. Who was he with?" "He wasn't with anyone. He was alone. But he bid on other things, Doombot parts, inner chassis. He said he had a grudge against Latveria." There it was, the connection. Kragoff, the sleepers, a Doombot, and a grudge against a nation. But as we flew back, a gnawing doubt aided me. Kragoff was brilliant, but he was a showman, an egotist. This plot, it was too clean, too strategic. It felt like someone else was holding the leash. We took the theory to Fury in his orbital satellite base. He listened, a monolithic statue in a leather coat. "So," he rumbled, "your unknown enemy has your old protégés. The codes were bought by the Red Ghost, who also bought himself a Doombot kit. Arkady pretends to try to kill Dr. Doom. The planner controls the response." "Who would be crazy enough to want a war between the US and Latveria?" I asked, though the list in my head was already shortening. Fury's eyes widened. He turned to a console, his fingers flying. "There's actually only one candidate with the means, the motive, and the sheer spite to pull it off." A face filled the screen. A woman, severe, with cold eyes and cybernetic implants tracing her temple. "Lucia von Bardus," Fury said. "Former Prime Minister of Latveria. Doom put her in power as a puppet. She tried to get ambitious, started selling his old tech to American supervillains. We took her down, hard. Castle fell on her. Next time we saw her, she was more machine than woman. She vanished when S.H.I.E.L.D. fell. She's got a grudge against Doom and the U.S., and she's smart enough to use Kragoff as her front man." The picture was complete, and it was worse than I had imagined. This wasn't Kragoff's play, it was hers. We were facing a ghost from my past and a ghost from Latveria's, and they were dancing together. "We have to warn Doom," Natasha said. Fury almost smiled. It wasn't a pleasant sight. "Good luck with that. He's not exactly welcoming to visitors." But we had to try. The plan was insane. Teleportation rigs, courtesy of Reed Richards. A high-altitude jump onto the roof of the Latverian embassy in New York. As the jet's hatch opened, howling wind filling the bay, Sitwell's voice crackled in my ear. "Remember, these are prototypes, more concerned about user error than equipment malfunction." "Comforting," I yelled back, and jumped. The world became a roaring blur of sky and city lights. Then a buzzing filled my bones, a sensation of being pulled apart and snapped back together. I stumbled onto cold, hard stone, the air suddenly still and heavy with incense. Natasha materialized beside me. We were in a grand, dark hallway, Gothic arches, tapestries of grim conquest. And standing at the end, having just placed his iconic mask upon his head, was Victor Von Doom. He didn't even turn. "Really?" his voice echoed, metallic and laden with infinite contempt. He raised his hand, and emerald energy crackled. We dove apart as a bolt shattered the wall where we'd stood. "Wait!" I shouted, scrambling up. "Wait, wait, wait!" He turned. The mask was expressionless, but the fury behind it was a physical force. You are the Winter Soldier. You are supposed to be dead. Are we correct in that? We're doing this all wrong, I said, holding my hands up, my heart hammering. We didn't come to attack you. The energy crackled around his fist again. Then why violate the sanctity of Doom's domain? I took a breath, meeting the blank gaze of his mask. We're here because you're about to be framed, and we need your help to stop it. For a long, terrible second, he was silent. The energy around his hand faded. He tilted his head just a little. Explain.
Doom listened. He didn't sit. He didn't offer a chair. He stood like a monolith in the center of his chamber, absorbing our story. When I mentioned the Doombot parts, a low, vibrating hum emanated from his armor. It was the sound of pure, undiluted rage. Lucia, he finally said, the name a curse. She was a flawed instrument, a child playing with forces beyond her comprehension. Her ambition was always her downfall. He strode to a bank of monitors, his cape swirling. To use a Doombot, the insult is beyond measure. His gauntleted fingers danced across a holographic keyboard. The signal is disappointingly obvious, but then subtlety was never her strength. A map flashed up, then zoomed in, a location in Midtown Manhattan, the United Nations headquarters. My blood went cold. Oh no. A performance, Doom sneered. She wishes to paint Doom as a madman, unleashing his wrath upon the world's stage. She will use my face to start her war. He turned from the console. You have brought this interesting problem to my doorstep. Why should Doom involve himself in your petty struggles? Natasha stepped forward. Because it's your face, Doctor, your reputation, and the war she starts won't be petty. It'll burn the world you wish to rule. Doom was silent for a moment. Then he gestured to a schematic that appeared in the air, a sleek, monstrously armed hoverjet. My personal craft. It will be faster than your shield relics. We go now. You will witness the power of Doom, and you will assist in cleaning this mess. But understand, this is not an alliance. This is reclamation. We took the jet. It was like riding a thunderbolt. Below us, New York sprawled like a circuit board. In minutes, we were hovering above the UN Plaza. Through the cockpit window, I saw the chaos already beginning. People running, a body on the steps. And there, standing in the shattered remains of a conference room window, was the Doombot. It was a perfect, terrible duplicate, cape flowing, arm raised in a commanding gesture. Beside it, holding a smoking RPG launcher, was Arcady. The ambassador is dead, Doom observed, his voice like grinding stones. The stage is set. He didn't wait for a plan. The canopy of the jet hissed open, and he simply stepped out, plummeting toward the plaza. He landed with a crash that shook the ground, energy crackling around him. Prepare to meet your destruction, fools, the Doombot bellowed, its voice a perfect, arrogant mimic. Arcady spun, raising his rifle. He fired a burst at Doom and me as we charged. Doom didn't flinch. A shimmering green shield materialized, the bullets vaporizing against it. Have you learned nothing? Doom's voice was colder than the void of space. None may touch Doom but those he permits. The two Dooms clashed. It was a terrifying spectacle, identical beings of metal and magic, blasts of energy scorching the marble, throwing guards and debris alike through the air. It was a perfect distraction. Arcady saw his opening and ran. He was fast, slipping through panicked crowds and shattered hallways. I went after him, my boots crunching on broken glass. He was heading for a service exit, firing wild shots behind him to slow me down. I didn't slow. He burst out into a loading dock. He turned, pulling a long, wicked knife from his belt. His eyes were wide, frantic, but burning with a fervent hate. You, he spat in Russian, you're supposed to be dead, traitor. He lunged. The move was one I'd taught, a fluid, economic strike aimed for the kidney. I parried with my metal arm, the screech of metal on metal.
I swept his legs, but he rolled, coming up fast. He was good. I'd made him good. But I'd also made him predictable. I saw the feint, the shift of his weight. As he lunged again, I sidestepped, caught his wrist, and drove my knee into his face. I felt his nose break. The knife clattered away. He stumbled back, blood streaming down his chin, and in his desperation he grabbed for my holstered pistol. He got it. He aimed it at my chest, his finger tightening on the trigger. I didn't move. The click was loud in the sudden quiet. Then a small, contained explosion erupted from the pistol's grip. Arkady screamed as shrapnel from the destroyed handle tore into his palm and neck. He dropped to his knees, clutching his throat, bright blood welling between his fingers. I walked over, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. The gun was keyed to my palm print, a final lesson he'd forgotten. He looked up at me, gasping, drowning in his own blood. There was confusion there, and betrayal. "Listen to me," I said, kneeling beside him, my voice low and urgent. "The woman controlling you, Lucia von Bardus, she is not serving Mother Russia. She is serving her own revenge. This was never your mission. It's a distraction, a stage for her next move." He coughed, a wet, horrible sound. His eyes were losing focus. We are both traitors here," he whispered. "But it does not matter. Mistress Lucia got what she needed from the robot. It is too late." His head lolled to the side. He was gone. A shadow fell over me. Doom stood there, his armor scorched but unbent. The remains of the Doombot lay in a sparking heap nearby. "It would seem we have both dealt with our imitations," Doom intoned. I stood up, turning to him. "You said she got what she needed from the robot. What else did you program into those things, Doom? What was the point?" Doom went very still. Then his voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Contingencies for the defense of Latveria. Launch codes for strategic munitions." The world seemed to tilt. Sitwell's voice screamed in my ear, but I barely heard it. Nick Fury was on the main channel, his roar of disbelief cutting through everything. "He programmed nuclear launch codes into a damned Doombot?" Doom was already moving back to his jet. "The boy has a point. We must intercept. The codes will be for a secondary system, a hidden silo, likely in the Latverian Alps. I aimed at Kregoff's old facilities. She will use my authority to fire my weapons at my enemies and let the world blame me." Back on the shield carrier, the mood was frantic. Doom, in a staggering display of cooperation, was jerry-rigging the teleportation rigs with parts from his jet. "Reed Richards' work is always ripe for improvement," he muttered as sparks flew from a soldering iron. "Can you repurpose it?" Natasha asked, her arms crossed. "Of course. It will be capable of one long-range jump, directly into the heart of the silo." It was a suicide plan. Jump in, stop the launch, and get out before the entire mountain came down on our heads, or before the remaining sleepers killed us. I looked at Natasha. She gave a small, tight nod. We'd done stupider things. The blue light of the teleport enveloped us. The sensation was like being dissolved. Then we were somewhere else, somewhere cold, dark, and humming with deadly power. The ground vibrated under my feet, a deep subsonic thumb that spoke of monstrous engines powering up. "Good," Doom said, his eyes glowing faintly behind his mask. "It means they know we are here." The attack came not from soldiers, but from the shadows. With guttural roars, 3 more gorillas, Kregoff's super apes, leapt from gantries above, guns blazing. Natasha and I dove for cover behind massive coolant pipes. "I'll take the apes," I yelled. "Get to the control room." I ran into the storm of bullets. My metal arm took a round, the impact a dull clang. I returned fire, driving one ape back behind a console. Another charged me, and I met its charge using its momentum to throw it into a bank of servers. Sparks showered us. Ahead, I saw a sealed blast door, the way to the missile control. As I ran for it, a figure dropped from the ceiling in front of me. Dmitri. He looked older than I remembered. His face was lined, but his eyes held the same fierce, unquestioning loyalty I'd seen decades ago.
He held a combat knife, its edge gleaming in the emergency lights. "Comrade Colonel," he said, his voice flat. There was no hatred there, just duty. "Dmitri," I said, lowering my gun. "It's over. The war is over. This isn't your fight." "No," he said, and there was a tremor of something, pain, confusion in that single word. "All of you have lied. I don't want to be in your new world." He attacked. He was a whirlwind, his moves sharp and precise, a brutal echo of my own style. I blocked, parried, gave ground. I didn't want to fight him. He was a ghost just like me, a man out of time whose only compass was a broken one. He drove me back against a railing, the knife flashing from my throat. I caught his wrist with my metal hand. We strained, eye to eye. "You have to listen," I gritted out. "This is not your cause anymore." "No," he roared, and his strength was shocking. He flipped me over the railing. I landed hard on a lower catwalk, the breath knocked out of me. He leapt down after me, knife raised for a killing thrust. I rolled, and his blade sparked off the metal grating. I kicked out, catching his knee. He grunted, stumbling. In that moment, I saw not a soldier, but a lost, terrified man. He pulled a sidearm from his hip and fired. I scrambled behind a support column, bullets pinging around me. I had to end this, now. I pulled a throwing knife from my boot. I didn't aim to kill. I aimed to disarm, to wound. I threw. He didn't try to.
They let me bury Dmitri, not with honors, the world still thought he was a terrorist, but in a quiet, unmarked spot in the woods outside Riga. It felt wrong to leave him in American soil. He was a patriot in his own broken way. He deserved to be near the motherland he thought he was serving. Natasha stood a respectful distance away as I shoveled the last of the dark earth. The rain had started again, a fine, cold mist. It felt like the whole world was crying for its lost soldiers. "Sidwell has the preliminary report," she said softly, walking up as I patted down the grave. "The launch codes were never fully set. Dmitri stopped it." I leaned on the shovel. He was a good soldier. He just forgot who the enemy was. "Or he remembered," she said. There was a deep sadness in her eyes. "Bucky, there's something else, something Sidwell held back until now." Back at the mobile command center, the atmosphere was grim. Sitwell didn't meet my eyes at first. He just slid a photograph across the table. It was a crime scene photo, a man's apartment, a man I knew, Fred Davis, the reporter, the one who stood by me during my trial, who argued for my pardon, who believed in James Barnes when no one else did. He was lying on his floor in a pool of blood. Written on the wall above him in that same blood were 3 words, "Only one Bucky left." The air left the room. The words swam in my vision. This wasn't just a kill, this was a message for me. Leo was talking to me. He was erasing my life, piece by piece. "It's making it personal," I whispered, the cold fury rising in me, thick and bitter. "It's always been personal," Natasha said, her hand resting on my arm. "For him, you're the original sin, the teacher who lived while his students were forgotten." We threw everything into finding Leo, but he was a ghost like I'd trained him to be. He left a trail of bodies, former handlers, low-level informants, anyone who might have a connection to the old Zephyr project. He was cleaning house, and he was doing it with a chilling, surgical precision. The break came from the most mundane source, newspapers. "It was a compulsion," Natasha explained, pointing to a map with dates and cities pinned. "A backup protocol in case a sleeper woke up disoriented. They were to check the classified ads in major newspapers. A specific, meaningless phrase would be the signal to make contact." We'd been looking for a soldier, but Leo had been living as a civilian, adrift for over a decade, woken not by a code, but an earthquake that shattered his stasis tube in a secret San Francisco lab. He'd climbed out into a world that made no sense, with no memory, no purpose. He'd been wandering ever since, a ghost in a living world, until he saw the ads placed by an old handler named Boris. "Boris tried to reactivate him," I said, looking at the crime scene photos from a safe house in Newark. Boris was slumped over a desk, a single bullet in the back of his head. Leo wasn't interested in taking orders. "He was interested in you," Natasha said. She pulled up a file. "After that, he started following the news. Your capture, your trial, your supposed death. He went to your funeral, Bucky. He listened to Steve give the eulogy." The thought made my skin crawl. He'd been there, in the crowd, mourning a man he believed had betrayed him, a man who was actually alive. "And when I came back," I finished, the pieces locking together, "when Fred Davis started doing those interviews defending me, that's when Leo decided the narrative was wrong, that I was a traitor who needed to be punished. It was a twisted form of honor, a deadly, obsessive quest for justice from a man whose mind had been fractured by time and trauma. He was always one step ahead. He took a SHIELD neuroscientist from a facility in New Mexico, a man named Rensky, who had a past in the Red Room's brainwashing programs. That's when we knew Leo's plan had shifted. He wasn't just killing my past, he was building a new weapon. We tracked a stolen motorhome across Colorado. Natasha and I gave chase on a high-speed bike. We caught up, a frantic, dangerous ballet on the highway. I boarded the moving vehicle, taking down guards. Natasha came through the other side. Sitwell's voice was frantic in my ear. "Thermals show 2 in the back. Their heat signature is off. Too hot. Bucky, get out." Leo stepped into the narrow hallway, a smile on his face. He opened fire, not at me, but at the front of the motorhome, killing the driver. The vehicle began to swerve. "That was brief but fun," he yelled over the roar of the wind. "Thanks for coming." And he jumped out onto a passing Humvee. "Natasha, follow him," I shouted. But her voice was tight with fear. "Bucky, the 2 in the back, they're not passengers. It's a bomb, a complex one. I've got maybe 90 seconds. My mind raced. "Get out. Go. Follow Leo." She hesitated for only a second, then leaped out the window onto the bike, peeling away after our target. I was alone in a speeding, driverless motorhome with a bomb. Sitwell's voice guided me to an upcoming exit, a mile away. I stomped on the gas, my heart hammering against my ribs, a silent countdown screaming in my head. 50 seconds. The exit ramp. 30 seconds. A crash barrier. 10 seconds. I wrenched the wheel, aiming for an overpass abutment, and jumped. The world exploded in fire and noise behind me as I hit the ground and rolled. The heat washed over me. I lay there, gasping, the taste of asphalt and smoke in my mouth. "Bucky, status!" Sitwell yelled. "Alive," I coughed. "Natasha?" A pause. A terrible, static-filled pause. She pursued the target into a dead zone. We've lost her signal." "No." I pushed myself to my feet, my body screaming in protest. "What do you mean a dead zone? Find her." But I already knew. The motorhome wasn't the trap, it was the diversion. He'd separated us. He had taken the one person I couldn't lose. They found the satellite jamming site hours later, and they found Natasha's blood, and a note carved into a tree. "Bucky, what's yours is mine." The words were a knife in my gut. Leo didn't just have her, he had broken the one thread connecting me to the man I was trying to be. He had taken Natasha, and he was going to remake her in his own image, in the Red Room's image. My hunt became a crusade of rage. I tore through the underworld, leaving a trail of broken bones and terrified informants. I wasn't looking for information anymore. I was looking for pain to match my own. I found Sitwell in a bar, looking as hollow as I felt. "We're friends, right?" he said, uncharacteristically soft. "Since when?" I growled, staring into my drink. "Since now, because I'm the only one who can give you this." He nodded towards the door. 3 men walked in, hard faces, Eastern European, ex-Spetsnaz, Leo's new recruits. I didn't wait for a plan.
I was on my feet, my fist connecting with the first man's jaw before he knew I was there. The bar erupted. It was brutal, ugly, and over in 2 minutes. I had one of them pinned, his arm twisted behind his back. "Where is Leo?" I snarled in Russian. "They don't tell us. He only gives orders. But he's been talking about a show, a grand performance. At the ballet. The ballet. Where Natasha, before she was the widow, was Natalia, the prima ballerina. It was a trap. Of course it was. He was using her as bait, using my memories as the hook. He was inviting me to watch his masterpiece. The private performance for a diplomatic charity. The theater was gilt and velvet. From the shadows of the rafters, I watched Natasha on stage. She moved with an ethereal grace that stole the breath from my lungs. She was perfect. She was also a stranger. Her eyes, when they scanned the audience, were flat, empty, programmed. Leo's plan unfolded with cruel precision. A staged accident outside to cause panic. Inside, Natasha protected the VIP guest, seamlessly moving to extract her from the chaos. A perfect excuse to get her alone. It was a kidnapping wrapped in a hero's narrative. I moved. I tackled her as she reached the First Lady's box. We crashed to the floor. "Natasha, stop! It's me!" Her eyes locked on mine, and there was nothing there. No recognition, no warmth, only a cold, blank slate. Then she screamed, a raw, furious sound. "Traitor!" And she fought. Not like my partner, not like the woman who held back when we sparred. She fought like the Black Widow at her most lethal. Every blow was meant to shatter bone, every kick aimed to disable. She was a storm of violence, and I was just trying to hold on. From the rafters, Leo laughed. He fired, not caring who he hit, driving us apart, turning the theater into a shooting gallery. I had a choice: go after Leo or save the civilians, save Sitwell from the Natasha's programmed rage. I chose her. I always chose her. I knocked the gun from her hand as she aimed at Sitwell. I stood between her and Leo, my mask off, my hands open. "I know you're still in there," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "Natasha, I know what they did to you. They did—"
The Shield medical bay was too bright, too clean. It felt like a lie. Natasha sat on the edge of a bed, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. The doctor said she was physically fine. The damage was all upstairs. Rensky, the neuroscientist Leo kidnapped, had done his work well. He'd built a trap within a trap. The first layer was what we saw, a trembling Rensky explained, under heavy guard. He was a broken man, afraid of Leo, afraid of me. She believed she was her old self, the ballerina Natalia. But once she broke free of that, a deeper program engaged. I leaned against the wall, my arms crossed, the metal one groaning under the pressure. What was the deeper program? Rensky wouldn't meet my eyes. It was about you, Mr. Barnes. It targeted her memories of you, specifically the emotional connections, the trust, the partnership. It severed those synaptic links. It didn't erase the facts, just the feelings attached to them. The room felt like it was spinning. You cut me out of her memories. "Novikov threatened my family," he wailed. "He said he would burn them alive. What was I supposed to do?" I wanted to strangle him. Instead, I asked the question that was tearing my heart out. "What else did you program into her?" He swallowed hard. A new narrative, that her entire time with S.H.I.E.L.D., with the Avengers, it was all a deep cover mission, that she had been reactivated by her true masters, Novikov and the Cause. She believes she is a double agent finally coming in from the cold. It was diabolical. He hadn't just taken her from me, he'd taken her from herself. He turned her life, her redemption, into a lie. Natasha was silent through all this. When the doctors and Rensky left, she finally looked at me. "I remember you," she said, her voice flat, analytical, like she was debriefing. "James Buchanan Barnes, the Winter Soldier, associate of Captain America. We've worked on several operations." Every word was a bullet. Associate. The data suggests a closer working relationship, she conceded, but there was no warmth, no shared history in her eyes. "I am sorry if this causes you distress." Distress.
I had to turn away. The pain was a physical thing, a cavity in my chest. "It's not your fault," I managed to say. "We'll fix this." "The priority is apprehending Leo Novikov," she stated, swinging her legs off the bed. "My malfunction can be addressed later." She was already pulling on her boots, becoming the widow again. But she was a different widow, one I didn't know, one who looked at me and saw a useful asset, not a partner. We tracked Leo to a final confrontation in the rain-soaked stillness of Arlington Cemetery, a symbolic place. Among the graves of heroes, he planned to detonate a bomb, a final, devastating statement. He had Natasha with him. She stood beside him, her face a perfect mask of loyalty. To him. I faced them alone, the rain mingling with the acid burn of betrayal in my throat. "Let her go, Leo. This is between us." "Is it?" Leo smiled, a chilling sight. He held a detonator in one hand, and with the other, he put a gun to Natasha's temple. "You taught us that leverage is everything, Colonel. What will you choose? To take him in, or to save her from having to shoot her friend Sitwell again?" It was a replay of the theater, a cruel choice. But this time, Hawkeye was my ace in the hole. His arrow took Natasha in the leg, not to harm, but to shock, to break Leo's hold for a split second. I charged. I shot Leo, not to kill, but to wound. He went down, laughing even as he bled. I ran to Natasha. She was on the ground, clutching her leg, staring at me with that horrible, empty look. "Natasha, it's me, Bucky, James." I took off my mask, the rain soaking my hair, my face. "Don't you remember?" She blinked. A flicker of something. Pain, confusion crossed her features. Then it was gone, buried under layers of programming. She stared right through me and asked the question that shattered my world. "Who the hell is Bucky?" They saved Leo's life. They had to. He laughed the whole time they stitched him up. He knew he'd won. The doctors worked on Natasha for weeks. They rebuilt the synaptic bridges. They restored her memories. Mostly. She remembered being an Avenger. She remembered working for S.H.I.E.L.D. She remembered everything. Except me. Not the facts. She knew who I was. She just couldn't feel it. The trust, the history, the unspoken language between us, it was gone, permanently severed. A single clean strand of memory snipped out by a master surgeon of the mind. I went to see her one last time before I left. She was in the gym, beating a sandbag with a fierce, controlled rhythm. "Natasha." She stopped, turned, wiped sweat from her brow. Barnes. A nod, acknowledgement, professional, distant. "I'm going away for a while. I heard the Bucky Barnes Worldwide Redemption Tour." She almost smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Be careful." There was so much I wanted to say, that I was sorry, that I loved her, that her not remembering was a worse punishment than anything Hydra ever did to me. All I said was, "You too." I walked out of the Triskelion and into the rain. Leo was in a supermax cell, but he'd won. He'd taken everything from me. My past was a chain of graves. My future was a blank wall. I was a ghost again, but this time there was no Natasha to remind me I could be a man. I had a list, a little black book of names given to me by a cynical, one-eyed man who thought I needed a purpose. Names of people I'd wronged as the Winter Soldier. A path of penance, or self-destruction. I wasn't sure which anymore. The first name was in the Bahamas. Colonel Andrei Rostov, the Red Barbarian, the man who sold the codes that started it all. He was on a beach, drinking something colorful, thinking he'd bought his peace. He never saw the bullet coming. I watched from the palms as he fell, a dark stain spreading on his garish shirt. One less ghost. But as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed with a message from Sitwell. It was a transcript from Lucia von Bardis's interrogation. "Sitwell, when you bought the activation codes, you bought 3. We found 2. What happened to the 3rd sleeper?" Von Bardis, laughing. "Oh, I'm afraid I have no idea. When I went to his tube, he was already gone. Empty. Long before I got there. That one, he could be anywhere." The message ended. I stood in the tropical heat, feeling a chill colder than Siberia. Leo wasn't the end. He was just a piece of it. There was a 3rd sleeper, and he had woken himself up years ago. And nobody knew where he was.
The list Fury gave me was a roadmap to hell. Every name was a scar on the world, and I'd put them there. Joe Robarts was near the top. A SHIELD agent, buried so deep in Hydra his own soul might have forgotten the light. His tether to the real world was his handler, Gina Autry. She was more than his contact, she was his heart. And in 1982, on a snowy field in Latveria, I put a bullet through that heart. I was there to extract a defecting scientist, Dr. Linus Tersova. Gina Autry died, stopping me. For over 30 years, Joe never broke cover. He lived the lie. Until last night. I found him in a cash-flush casino in Macau, which he had just turned into a slaughterhouse. He'd taken out 3 Hydra faction heads in a blaze of glory. He wasn't trying to escape anymore. He was trying to die. I fought my way to him through waves of Hydra goons. They were fanatics, muttering about cutting off limbs and growing stronger. One of them, riddled with bullets, kept coming, a green, crystalline growth spreading from his wounds. "Cut off a limb," he gurgled. "2 more shall take its place." Joe, bleeding and exhausted, had a wild look in his eyes. "Can you punch a hole in this thing? I've got an idea." I obliged, driving my metal fist into the creature's chest. Joe shoved a homemade bomb into the hole I'd made. I threw the monster out a window just as it detonated in a shower of green ichor. "Time to go," I said, grabbing Joe's arm. He spun, brass knuckles flashing. "Hell no, I'm putting every last one of them in the ground." I hit him, a clean shot to the jaw. He collapsed, vomiting. "You blew 30 years of cover tonight," I snarled, hauling him up. "Why? What do you know?" He didn't know. That was the tragedy. He just had a feeling, a sense that the walls were closing in, that the world was about to break. He'd heard whispers in Hydra's dark corners, a new power, a ghost in the machine. Fury's files on the Tersova extraction were incomplete. They never mentioned the doctor's daughter, Tesla. A little girl coloring a picture of Captain America and Bucky Barnes in her father's study on the day I came to kill him. The KGB took her. The Red Room took her. Her name led us to a monster called Father Hammer, a former Red Room colonel who now ran the orphanage, a private school for turning children into killers. When we found his jungle compound, the children had already revolted. They'd killed him. Their new teacher, they said, was the electric ghost, Tesla Tersova. She wasn't just alive, she had taken her father's brilliance and her captor's cruelty and forged herself into something new, something powerful, and she was angry. Her vengeance was breathtaking in its scope. She hacked S.H.I.E.L.D.'s life model decoy program, turning their deep cover agents into assassins. 6 world leaders died in 15 minutes. She stole a Gamma warhead depot, and then she sent a message, broadcast on every screen, in every language. Her face was serene, her voice a chilling melody. "Consider this message a formal courtesy. What you have witnessed is the blossoming of your horrible labors, a bitter harvest grown in ash and nurtured by blood. I am Tesla Tersova, the voice of the electric ghost, and these are your last rites." The world was on fire, and Fury had one card left to play, a dead man. "She'll never see you coming," he said. "You're the only ghost she hasn't accounted for." The plan was a one-way ticket. A S.H.I.E.L.D. jump rig modified with scavenged doom tech would throw me into the Van Allen radiation belt where Tesla's satellite was cloaked. When she uncloaked to refuel on cosmic rays, I'd have a window to board. I'd either stop her or die in the void. I didn't care anymore. The jump was like being born backwards, a scream of light and tearing. Then I was clamped to the hull of a satellite that looked like a dark crystal flower. I blew an airlock and slipped inside. It was a cathedral of light and humming energy, and there in the center, working on a device that glowed with impossible geometries, was Tesla. She was no longer a little girl. She was a woman of light and shadow, her hair floating as if underwater, her eyes crackling with contained power. She didn't turn. "You breathed deeply when you entered, James. My nanite cloud, my telepathic army, they are in your mind now. Your only hope for mercy lies in the truth." I raised my gun.
I'm here to stop you." She finally glanced at me, a look of profound pity on her face. "You are a poor little bug. You never stood a chance." She gestured. A psychic gun made of hard light appeared in her hand. She fired twice. The impact slammed me into a console. I felt my ribs crack, the breath leave my body. She floated over, looking down at me. "The cosmic rays are a celestial gift, a power limited only by imagination, and soon its full power will be mine. I will no longer play your savage game." She reached into my mind. I felt her, a cold, brilliant presence sifting through the wreckage. She saw the little girl she was. She saw the winter soldier I was. She saw Natasha. "Ah," she whispered, "a little broken glass hiding in the sand, a widow of your own. Is she your penance, the mistake you don't dare make again?" Her voice was almost gentle. "You're behaving like one of them, a slave to the past, afraid of tomorrow." She leaned closer. "Your true fear isn't that you can't live with what you've done. It's that you can. We are so much more alike than you know." Her hand touched my chest. The pain vanished. My wounds knit themselves closed. She was healing me with a thought. "I've shown the world below that it is chaos, a theater of the absurd, and now, here at the heart of a collapsing star, the beginning meets the end. We are more alive than anyone has ever been. You're free, James. I release you from your pain." She leaned in, and she kissed me. It wasn't a kiss of passion, it was a kiss of transmission. A flood of understanding, of power, of release poured into me. For a second, I saw it all. Her pain, her brilliance, her vision of burning down the cruel momentum of time itself. I pulled away, gasping. "Is that a cosmic cube?" "No," she said, holding up the glowing, shifting object in her hands. "The cube is power for power's sake, a blunt instrument. This is the Tersova Tesseract. Using the cosmic rays, I have built a bridge across time and space, and now I will burn it down." She began to weave. The room around us dissolved. We weren't on the satellite anymore. We were in the past. I saw the snowy field in Latveria. I saw myself, younger, colder, raising a rifle. Gina Autry stood between me and Dr. Tersova. "This is freedom from regret," Tesla's voice echoed through time. "I will smother these monsters in their cradles." I saw myself, finger on the trigger. I saw the little girl, Tesla, coloring in the next room at the day I came to kill him. I couldn't let her. I threw myself at her. "This isn't a game. You have to live with it. It's what makes us stronger." We tumbled through the psychic landscape, a hill of memory and snow. She beat me with a branch, fueled by decades of rage. I grabbed her arms. "Your father is in that cabin," I shouted, pointing to the memory. "You could see his face, hear his voice. Is this what you choose, to become the monster that took him?" I took my knife and slammed it into a tree stump beside us. A symbol, a choice. She looked at the knife. She looked at the memory of Father Hammer looming over her. The rage in her eyes broke, replaced by a tsunami of grief. "No," she sobbed. "No." She grabbed my metal arm, the arm of her father's killer, and with a scream that tore through reality, she smashed it down on the Tesseract. The universe screamed with her. The satellite, the psychic realm, everything began to unravel. The energy was going critical, collapsing in on itself. "The escape pods," I yelled over the roaring chaos. "Useless," she cried. "The energy is expanding too fast. I can turn it inward, create a fail-safe implosion, but the window is too small. There's no escape for me." I looked at my arm, the teleport rig. It was one jump, one chance, and with the radiation distortion, it was a crapshoot. "There's always a choice," I said. "My rig has a signal. Your intangibility field might shield us both through the jump. We go together." She stared at me, the woman who wanted to burn time, faced with a chance for a future. Slowly, she nodded. We activated the signal. We held hands as the world dissolved into blinding, silent white. We rematerialized 1,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean, clinging to each other, surrounded by falling debris from the dying satellite. The cold air hit us like a wall. We plunged toward the churning water. I reached for her as we fell. Our fingers brushed, and then the dark, cold sea swallowed us whole.
I washed up on a rocky beach in Japan, alone. My body was a map of new bruises, my arms sparking fitfully. Tesla was gone, swallowed by the sea, or saved by her powers. I didn't know. I hoped, for the first time in a long time, that it was the latter. Joe Robards found me in a dockside bar, a place where no one asked questions. I was working my way through a bottle of something that tasted like regret. "Sunrise or sunset?" Joe asked, sliding onto the stool next to me. "Hard to tell the difference these days." He looked at my empty side. "Where's Tesla?" "Not sure," I grunted. "Alive, out of everyone's reach, for now." "Good." He took the tablet from my hands, the one with Gina Atri's picture on it. "You're driving, Barnes, and if you're not careful, you'll drive right off a cliff. But that's what you want, isn't it? For something to finally chew you up and be done with it." He placed his service pistol on the bar between us. We all knew, Gina knew. If the mission was all there was, if I died doing it, then so be it. She was the first person who accepted that. She never asked me to change. He spun the gun, pointing the muzzle at his own chest. It scared the hell out of me, so I ran, right back into the arms of who they wanted me to be. I hadn't spoken to Gina in months when she died. I blamed myself. I turned our love into my excuse. He looked at me, his eyes clear for the first time. Gina Atri wasn't a victim. She was one of us. She wore the same weight, and when it got heavy, she didn't let it drag her under. She stood up. He flipped the gun, offering me the handle. "You got that?" I looked from the gun to his face. "Yeah." "You better." He stood up, flipped me off with a tired grin, and walked out of the bar, into the fading light. I sat there for a long time, the weight of his words settling on me. He was right. I was looking for a cliff. I was treating my list like a suicide note. But Tesla had shown me something else, a path of rage that led only to more fire. Joe showed me a path of acceptance that led somewhere else. Not to forgiveness, maybe just to a place where you could breathe. I left the bar. I had one more name on my list, the most important one. It wasn't written down. I went to New York. I didn't call ahead. I just stood outside her apartment building in the rain, like a stray dog. I didn't know what I would say. The door opened. Natasha stood there, dressed in sweats, her hair in a ponytail. She held a bag of trash. She froze when she saw me. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. The rain pattered on the awning. "You're soaked," she finally said, her voice neutral. "Yeah." She sighed, a small, exasperated sound I remembered from a lifetime ago. "Well, don't just stand there. You'll track water everywhere." She held the door open. I walked inside. Her apartment was clean, sparse, lived in. She didn't offer me a towel. She just tossed one at my head from a hallway closet. "I was in the neighborhood," I said lamely. "I heard about Macau and the satellite." She leaned against her kitchen counter, arms crossed. "Fury's not happy. Says you're a loose cannon." "Fury's rarely happy." A faint, almost smile touched her lips. It was gone in a second. "Why are you here, Barnes?" I struggled for the words. "I've been checking off a list, people I hurt, trying to make things right, or at least less wrong." And I got to the end of it. The last name. It's you." She didn't flinch, but something shifted in her eyes. The professional wall softened just a fraction. "You didn't hurt me, Bucky. Leo did.
Rensky did. I'm the reason they targeted you. My past is a poison that gets on everyone I care about. It got Fred killed. It got inside your head. I'm so sorry, Natasha." She was silent for a long time. She looked down at her hands, then out the window at the rain-streaked city. "I don't remember us," she said quietly. "The doctors can show me mission logs, footage, reports. I can see the data. I know we were close, partners, maybe more." She looked back at me, and there was a profound sadness there, but also a steely resolve. "But I don't feel it. It's like reading a biography of someone else. The emotions, they're just gone." It was the confirmation I'd been dreading, the final sentence. "But," she continued, taking a step closer, "I know who I am. I'm Natasha Romanoff. I've been brainwashed, turned, manipulated more times than I can count, and every time I fight my way back to me. This is just another version of that." She stopped in front of me. "I may not remember what we had, but I can see the man you are now. I see you trying. I see the weight you carry. And I know in the part of me that makes logical deductions from evidence, that the Natasha Romanoff who loved James Barnes, she would want him to stop carrying that weight alone. She would want him to stand up." She was echoing Joe's words, but coming from her, they were a lifeline. "So," she said, her tone shifting to something lighter, almost teasing, "are you going to stand there dripping on my floor all night, or are you going to order some truly terrible Chinese food? I have a 6-month backlog of terrible movies to catch up on, and it's less depressing with company." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't our old friendship. It was a new starting line, a chance to build something from the wreckage, brick by painful brick. I managed a real smile. It felt strange on my face. "The worst Chinese food you've got." We ate lo mein on her couch and watched a movie about a talking dog. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about the future. We just were. And for the first time since Leo took her, the crushing loneliness lifted, just a little. It was a beginning.
The peace didn't last. It never does. A new alert came from SHIED, now trying to rebuild under Maria Hill. A pattern of killings, precision strikes, high-value targets across Europe, ex-KGB, ex-Stasi, ex-Red Room accountants, bankers who laundered money for the Soviet machine. Someone was erasing the old regime's financial and logistical architecture, not for justice, for something else. The familiar, surgical, efficient, leaving no witnesses. But there was a flair to it now, a calling card. At each scene, a small, hand-carved wooden wolf was left behind. A wolf, the symbol of the Zephyr program, the Winter Soldier's pack, the third sleeper. He wasn't just awake, he was hunting, and he was building a war chest. We called him Volkov, the wolf. He'd been active for years, a ghost earning a ghost's wages, amassing resources, connections, power. While Leah was obsessed with me and Arkady and Dmitri were pawns, Volkov had been playing a longer, smarter game. He wasn't seeking revenge or redemption. He was building an empire from the shadows. His final target was the biggest, a vault in a Swiss bank that didn't exist, holding the last unspent treasury of the Soviet Union's Black Ops budget, a fortune that could buy armies, sway nations. We had to stop him, not just because of the money, because Volkov represented the ultimate perversion of my work. I hadn't just created a killer, I'd created a self-made king of shadows. Natasha and I went to Zurich. The plan was to intercept the transfer, to draw Volkov out. The bank was a fortress of modern security and old-world stone. We infiltrated silently, taking down guards with quiet efficiency. We were a good team again, even with the missing memories. Muscle memory, tactical synchronicity, it was all still there.
We reached the central vault. It was already open, and inside, surrounded by stacks of gold bars and bearer bonds, stood Volkov. He was older than I remembered, but fit, moving with a panther's grace. His hair was steel gray, his eyes the color of a winter sky. He held no weapon. He didn't need one. "James," he said, his voice a smooth, cultured baritone, no trace of a Russian accent. He'd perfected the disguise. "I've wondered when you'd come. I've left you breadcrumbs for a decade." "The killings, the wolves," I said, stepping into the vault, Natasha flanking me. "Spring cleaning," he shrugged, "loose ends, and capital acquisition. This," he gestured to the wealth around him, "is not for greed. It's for freedom, the ultimate freedom, from nations, from ideologies, from history itself." "You're buying your own private world," Natasha stated. "I'm building it," he corrected. "A world where men like us are not weapons to be used and discarded. We are the architects, the silent partners in every transaction, the whisper in every ear of power. A world where the winter soldier isn't a ghost story, but a founding principle." He was offering me a version of Tesla's vision, but cold, calculated, stripped of emotion, a machine of perfect amoral control. "You trained me to see the strings, James. Now I pull them. Join me. Together, we wouldn't just haunt the world, we would own its nightmares." For a second, I saw it. An end to the running, a purpose, a throne in the shadows. It was seductive in its absolute, terrible clarity. Then I looked at Natasha. She said nothing, just watched me, her face unreadable, but her presence was an anchor, a reminder of a different path, a path in the light, however dim. "I'm done with that world," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not a weapon anymore, and I'm not an architect of nightmares." Volkov's pleasant smile faded. "A pity. Then you are merely a relic, and relics belong in museums, or in the ground." He moved. It was like fighting a mirror that predicted my every move. He knew all my patterns, my rhythms, but I knew his too. We were a matched set, a deadly dance of block and counterstrike. Natasha engaged as well, but Volkov was prepared for her, using the confined space of the vault to limit her acrobatic advantages. We were a good team again, even with the missing memories. Muscle memory, tactical synchronicity, it was all still there. We hadn't been shaken by the killings, but he had. It had weakened his resolve, just enough. Still, he knew when to retreat, and this time he knew how to make it matter. He aimed for me, secondly, to push me out, but the first blow was aimed at Natasha. "How do you live with yourself, James? No one trusts you the way you operate. It's not true. It's true and unfair. I will build a world without efficiency." It was a slight hint, but enough. I felt his weight shift, a tiny change in his center of gravity, a fraction of a second before he made his move, and enough time to push Natasha away, out of the line of fire. The vault door began to descend, cutting the room in half. He was on one side with half the fortune. Natasha and I were on the other. "This is but a fraction," he called out as the door sealed with a final thud. "The game is just beginning, James, and I have all the pieces." He escaped, with a fortune, with a plan. We were left in a vault full of money, empty-handed. Back on the shield jet, the mood was grim. Volkov was in the wind, richer than nations, and with a vision that made Lucia von Bardus look like a petty vandal. "He's not going to stop," Natasha said, cleaning a cut on her knuckle. "I know." I stared out at the clouds. "I created him. I have to finish this." "We," she corrected softly. I looked at her. She didn't remember loving me, but she believed in the mission, and maybe She was starting to believe in me again. It was enough. It had to be. Volkov's prediction was right. The game had changed. We were no longer hunting a rogue asset. We were facing a new world order, built by my own hands. And the final battle wouldn't be in a cemetery or a vault. It would be in the heart of the system he wanted to corrupt. We had to think bigger. We had to be more than soldiers. We had to be heroes.
Volkov's first move was a masterpiece of economic terrorism. He didn't buy weapons, he bought debt. The sovereign debt of a small, struggling Eastern European nation, Kravia. Overnight, he called it in. When the government couldn't pay, he offered a solution. Cede control of their national utilities, their transportation grid, their communications, to a private consortium he owned. He was buying a country, not with soldiers, with spreadsheets. It was a test case. If it worked in Kravia, he would move on to bigger, more unstable nations. He would create a network of client states, a shadow empire with him as the puppet master. We couldn't fight him with guns. We had to fight him with his own weapons: information, influence, and sheer audacious nerve. We needed a team, not spies, a different kind of force. I went to Steve. He was in a midtown gym, pounding a heavy bag that protested with each blow. He stopped when he saw me, his face a mixture of relief and concern. "I heard about Zurich," he said, tossing me a towel. Hill filled me in. "We need your help, Steve. Not Captain America's, your help. Your understanding of right and wrong in a world that's all gray." He didn't hesitate. "What's the plan?" The plan was Sam Wilson, the Falcon, now carrying the mantle of Captain America. He understood modern warfare, cyber and otherwise. He had a moral compass that was unshakable and a deep well of compassion we desperately needed. The plan was Sharon Carter, the power broker. She was deep in the underworld of information and influence, a world Volkov now swam in. She owed Steve, and she understood the stakes. The plan was Yelena Belova, the other Black Widow, Natasha's sister in every way that mattered. She was a wild card, fueled by a different kind of rage and a fierce protective love for Natasha. If Volkov threatened her family, Yelena would burn his world down. We gathered in a safe house that wasn't S.H.I.E.L.D., wasn't Avengers. It was ours, a war room for a shadow war. "He's using shell companies, AI trading algorithms, and old-fashioned blackmail," Sharon explained, holographic displays floating around her. "His network is a hydra. Cut off one head, two more funded by Kravian utilities take its place." "So we don't cut off heads," Sam said, studying the data. "We poison the body. We make his assets toxic. We expose his schemes not to governments, but to the people. A populist revolt he can't buy off." "It requires an inside man," Yelena said, her voice sharp. "Someone in his financial structure, a weak link." We found her. An idealistic young programmer from MIT named Lynn. She'd been hired to write the AI for Volkov's trading firm, believing she was working for a philanthropic investment group. When she realized the truth, that her code was being used to destabilize economies, she tried to quit. Volkov had persuaded her to stay. We extracted her from a safe house in Berlin where Volkov's men were holding her for her own protection. She was terrified, but she was also angry, and she had a back door into his entire system. "I can write a worm," she said, her fingers flying over a keyboard in our safe house. "It won't steal the money. It will redirect it. Every transaction he makes, a micro percentage gets siphoned, untraceably, into accounts I'll set up in the names of the people he's exploiting. It'll be slow, but in a year he'll have bled out and they'll have a fighting chance." It was a beautiful, subtle weapon, theft as justice. But Volkov wasn't a man to be bled slowly. He felt the pinch. He traced it back to Lynn, and he didn't send mercenaries. He came himself. He attacked our safe house not with an army, but with a single devastating weapon, the truth. He broadcast a data packet to every news outlet in the world, dossiers, proof. James Buchanan Barnes, the Winter Soldier, alive. His entire history, every assassination, every op, laid bare.
Alongside it, files on Natasha's past in the Red Room, on Yelena, on Sharon's ambiguous dealings, on Sam's less sanctioned missions. He didn't want to kill us. He wanted to unmask us, to show the world that its would-be saviors were monsters in disguise, to break our credibility, our will to fight. The media cyclone was instant and brutal. We were besieged. Our faces were on every screen, our pasts debated by talking heads. We were trapped, not by walls, but by scrutiny. In the chaos, Volkov made his move on Kravia. With the world distracted by our scandal, his private security forces moved in to stabilize the utilities, facing minimal public resistance. He was winning. We sat in the darkened safe house, the glow of dozens of condemnatory news screens washing over us. The weight of our pasts was a physical pressure. "This is what he does," I said, my voice hollow. "He uses your own history as a cage." Natasha stood up. She walked to the main console and turned off every screen. The room plunged to silence and shadow. "No," she said, her voice clear and firm. "He's made a mistake. He's shown all our cards. There are no more secrets. We're free." We all looked at her. "He thinks shame is a weapon," she continued, "but we've lived with our shame. We carry it every day. Showing it to the world doesn't change what we did. It only shows who we're trying to be despite it." Steve nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. "He's given us the narrative, the redemption arc, the monsters fighting a bigger monster." Sam chuckled. "The court of public opinion. I've dealt with worse." It was Yelena who came up with the final move. "If he wants a show," she said, a vicious grin on her face, "we give him a show. We don't hide. We go to Kravia. We stand between his mercenaries and the people. Let the world watch. Let them see the Winter Soldier not as an assassin in the dark, but as a shield in the light." It was insane. It was perfect. We didn't sneak into Kravia. We arrived at the main square of its capital in boar-light daylight. No masks, no stealth suits, just us, a battered, infamous band of brothers and sisters. The people gathered, curious, afraid. Volkov's mercenaries in sleek, nondescript armor moved to contain us. I stepped forward. I didn't address the mercenaries. I turned to the crowd, to the cameras I knew were streaming this live across the globe. "My name is James Buchanan Barnes," I said, my voice amplified by Sam's tech. "I was the Winter Soldier. I did terrible things for a cause I didn't believe in. I've spent years trying to atone." I gestured at Volkov's forces. "This man, who calls himself Volkov, was one of my students. He is using the skills I taught him not to atone, but to control, to enslave your country with debt and fear. He believes our pasts make us monsters. I'm here to tell you and him, the past is a place to learn from, not a life sentence." I turned to face the line of mercenaries. I raised my metal arm not in a fist, but in a gesture of defiance. I shouted, "You want Kravia? You have to go through us." For a moment, there was silence. Then from the crowd, a single cry went up, then another. The people of Kravia, seeing their oppressors face down by the world's most infamous ghosts, found their courage. Volkov had miscalculated. He thought our past would bury us. Instead, it had given us a foundation to stand on. The battle for Kravia wasn't fought with bullets. It was fought with symbols, and we had just stolen his. From his hidden command center, Volkov watched his carefully laid plans unravel. He saw the transfer worm bleeding his accounts dry. He saw his mercenaries hesitating in the face of a public, principled stand. He saw his narrative of cold, superior control shattered by messy public heroism. He had one move left, the move of a cornered animal. He came from me, personally.
He found me on the roof of Kravia's Parliament building as the sun set over the liberated city. The celebrations in the streets below were a distant hum. He wore a simple combat suit, no insignia. He carried no visible weapon. "A pretty speech, James," Volkov said, his voice carrying on the cold wind. "But speeches don't change what we are. We are instruments of a colder logic. You've chosen sentiment. It will be your epitaph." "It's already yours," I replied. "Your empire is dust. Your money is feeding the people you tried to starve. You have nothing left." "I have the truth," he sneered, "that in the end it comes down to this, the teacher
and the student, the original and the copy. Which design is superior? He attacked. This wasn't the clinical duel in the vault. This was raw, unfiltered fury. All his frustration, his ruined plans, channeled into every blow. He was faster than before, stronger, fighting without the calculated restraint of a man with an empire to run. I fought defensively, letting his rage wash over me. He knew all my old moves, so I used new ones. Moves I'd learned from Steve, from Sam, from Natasha. Moves born of partnership, not solitary perfection. A block taught to me by an immortal patriot. A disarm maneuver refined by a flying hero. A reversal I'd practiced 1,000 times with a partner who, even without her memories, moved in sync with my soul. I was no longer just the Winter Soldier. I was an amalgam of everyone who had fought to pull me from the darkness. I was a product of my friends. Volkov began to tire. His rage was burning him out. He fought with the skill of the past. I fought with the adaptability of a man who had a future to protect. He landed a solid hit to my jaw. I spat blood and smiled. "What are you smiling at?" he snarled. "You're a perfect copy," I said, circling him, "of a weapon that doesn't exist anymore. I'm not that weapon. I'm James Barnes, and James Barnes has people who'll miss him if he's late for dinner." With a roar, he charged for a final desperate tackle. I didn't meet him head on. I sidestepped, using his momentum, and drove my elbow into the back of his neck as he passed. He stumbled, off balance, toward the roof's edge. He caught himself on the low parapet, looking down at the long drop to the street below. He turned, panting, defeated. I didn't advance. I stood my ground. "It's over, Alexei." I used his real name, the name of the boy he was before I made him into Volkov. He looked at me, and for a second, the cold mastermind was gone. In his eyes, I saw the same lost confusion I'd seen in Dmitri, the same fractured pain that had driven Leo mad. He was just another ghost I'd created. "What was it all for?" he whispered, the wind stealing his words. "The training, the pain, the sleep. If not for this—" "I don't know," I honestly answered. "Maybe there was no point. Maybe it was just cruelty wrapped in a flag. But we get to choose what it means now. You can choose to end the cycle, right here." He looked at the drop, then looked back at the city, at the lights coming on in the windows of the people he'd tried to own. The fight left his body. The wolf was gone. He sagged against the parapet. "I am so tired, James." SHIELD agents, led by a no-nonsense Maria Hill, swarmed the roof moments later. They took Volkov into custody without a fight. He went quietly, his head bowed, the architect of shadows finally stepping into the light of judgment. It was done. All the sleepers, the ghosts were laid to rest. Weeks later, I stood on the balcony of a new safe house, somewhere warm. The official story was a mess. Volkov was in a supermax. The money was slowly finding its way back to the people he'd tried to starve. The world was still trying to figure out what to do with the Winter Soldier who kept saving it. I felt a presence beside me. Natasha. She handed me a beer. "Hill says the diplomatic fallout will take years to clean up," she said, leaning on the railing. "Sounds about right." We drank in comfortable silence. The stars were bright here, away from the city lights. "After a while," she said, "I've been reading the old mission reports, the ones about us, Budapest, the Red Room cleanup, the thing with the floating city. And it's a good story." She glanced at me. "The data suggests we were a hell of a team. The data isn't wrong." She was quiet for another long moment. "The doctors say the memories might never come back. The emotional connections, they were cut too cleanly." I know. I'd made my peace with it. "But," she said, turning to face me, her eyes reflecting the starlight, "but they say new pathways can form, new connections, stronger ones sometimes, built on choice, not just history." My breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, James Barnes, She took my human hand in hers. Her skin was warm. "I may not remember loving you, but I've seen the man you are. I've fought beside him. I trust him with my life, and I'd like to get to know him, if he's interested." The weight I'd carried for a lifetime didn't vanish, but it shifted. It became something I could bear, because I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. I looked at our joined hands, then back into her eyes, where a new fragile hope was beginning to glow. "I'd like that very much," I said. She smiled, a real, true Natasha smile, and squeezed my hand. Below us, the world slept, ignorant of the ghosts that walked among them, the wars fought in shadows and light. But up on that balcony, under a blanket of stars, two broken pieces of history found a new way to fit together. Not as assassin and spy, not as teacher and student, not even as lost lovers, just as Bucky and Natasha, starting over. And for the first time in 100 years, the winter felt like it might finally be ending.